Hey guys, I just wanted to show you what we'll be working on in this series. We're going to be making Pong with a few particle effects and a score UI. Nothing too fancy, but it's a very simple project. And it gives you a sense of the Unity UI and how certain things, certain physics-based things work. And it's just overall a pretty fun project, and it's a project that I think everyone should start off on. That and the rollerball tutorial on Unity, which I will link in the description down below. But without further ado, this is my series on Pong. Enjoy. So we're going to be making Pong and learning the fundamentals as we go. So if you don't already, you should download the latest version of Unity. This should be on the Unity download page. Very easy to install, very intuitive. I'll put a link in the description for where to download it. Once you have it downloaded and you open it up, you should have this window minus the projects. So we're going to click New. We're going to name this Project Pong. Make sure the template is in 3D. Don't worry about organization. This is a personal thing. And you can decide where you want to put this project. I suggest you put it not on your desktop in a more secure location, but it's up to you. From there, you're going to hit Create Project. Right, so my view is a bit different from yours if you just installed Unity. So here's what we're going to do. So you should right now have the default Unity view right now. So what you're going to do now is go to the top right, and you're going to hit 2 by 3. This sets it up similar to what I already have. You're going to take this panel here and drag it. That way it shrinks everything down, making more room for the scene and game view. I'll explain what that is later. At the top right, you're going to want to switch to one column layout at the top right of the project tab, right there. This makes it so if I were to create a folder or any object, it would show up like this, versus if I were to show it in 2-column, it would show up in a more larger way, and you would have this side single column here. It makes things get really cluttered, so in this view, it's better to go 1 column. So now that you have that, you're going to go to Window. You're going to go all the way down to Console. This should open up this detached window here. You're going to want to click on the Console tab here and drag it down here. This is where you do your debugging and where it'll tell you what your errors are. And if you want to view the error, if it's too large, you can grab here and just drag it out. And then once you're done, you can drag it back in. Simple. Now that we have that done, we're going to go back up to where you selected the layout. You're going to hit Save Layout. You can call this whatever you want, but we're going to call this Better Layout. Oops. Okay, cool. So now whenever you start up Unity, you're able to switch to it, but it should be set as the default as of now. So there are a few default so when you start up the scene or the project, you're going to have 5 default tabs plus the console one I told you to add. So there's the scene view, the game view, the hierarchy, the project, and the inspector. So the scene view is where you modify all of the objects in it. This is where you place things in. This is where you can add scripts if you want to, though I suggest putting scripts on items in the hierarchy, but we'll get to that later. You can move things around. Like this is the camera here. Whenever you create a new scene, you start off with a directional light, which acts as the sun, and a main camera, and that's it. It's all empty space. And a scene is essentially a level in a video game. So that's how you can think about that. And while we're at it, we're going to hit Control S or Command S if you're on Mac, and we're going to call this level Pong. So we can save another scene, which is another level. If we wanted to add different game modes, maybe we can also put it on the same level, but that's a different story entirely. So let's talk a little bit about navigation. So to pan around like this, it's middle mouse. So you can pan on one plane based on what you're looking at. To rotate around, you can hold Alt and then left click and drag to rotate around. So if you were to pan, it pans on that axis again, on just that plane. Alt right click and drag will zoom in and out, though I suggest using the scroll wheel, but that's a personal preference. So now, let's talk about setting up the project. So, step one, we're going to want to create a plane, just so we don't look into the void when looking at our Pong ball. So we're going to right click in the hierarchy tab. The hierarchy is basically everything that is currently in the scene. You can see up here, it says Pong. And over here, this is one of the levels that we have. So if I were to create a new, say, Control-Shift-S, I don't know what it is on Mac, unfortunately. I'm going to call this test. And we're going to move this over here, hit Control-Save. You can see that in the hierarchy, the current level is test. So if we were to switch back to Pong, the camera moves back here because it's a different level. So we're going to delete test because we don't need it right now. But now we're going to set up the environment. So we're going to create a 3D object. Go down to, by right clicking, by the way. So you right click on hierarchy, hit 3D object, and you go to plane. So now you can see over here in the transform tab, this dictates where it is, how much it's rotated, and its scale. We're gonna want to reset it. So go up to this gear icon in the top right of transform and hit reset. So it's at the center. So now we're gonna wanna set the scale. So we're gonna set the scale on the x-axis, so along this way to 24. Oops. Yep. Did I make it too big? Good. And we're gonna set it on the Z. Oh wait, no, not 24. I'm sorry. We're gonna set it to 10. 8. 8 looks good. And that's kind of big. Bring that down to 4. 4. Whoops. And we're gonna set this on the Z-axis. We're gonna set that to 3. Yeah, 3 looks good. All right, we can adjust this as we go along. In fact, let's make it 2.5. That way there's room for the ball to move around. So now we're gonna take this camera, because currently the camera view, the game view here is what the player sees. If we want to get a better sort of reference of what the player sees, we're gonna go to free aspect. We're gonna click on free aspect, and we're gonna go down to 16:9, and this is your average 1080 monitor. I know there's a lot of 4K monitors out right now, but this is what the average user will use. And then we're going to lift camera. We're going to hit W to use the move tool. And we're going to hit this, click on this arrow and drag up. And then we're going to go over here on the rotation axis is this. On the x-axis, we're going to do 90 degrees. See? So now it's rotated 90 degrees. Currently, we're using a perspective camera, which means that you can see here, it's a cone. This mimics the 3D world. How that works? We all have a cone of vision, but we're going to change that so everything looks a bit flatter by changing it to orthographic in the camera tab. You have to click on main camera, go to projection, orthographic. And you can see that the square is now smaller than the plane. So we're going to go to size. I'm going to size that up until in the game view you can see that it's kind of, you can see the background peering out there. We're going to want a little bit of background to place the score there. So now that we have that, so we can differentiate it from the walls, we're going to create a material to change the color of the floor. Oh, also while we're at it, we're going to click on plane. We're going to go up here in the inspector. We're going to type in ground. So this will be the sort of the background of the game a little bit. It's the ground. So now if you go into the project tab where everything is held for the entire project, not just the level, we're going to right click, go to create, and then go down to material. We're going to call this material ground. So now we're just going to click and drag this on. Right now nothing's happened because right now it's currently white. So if we were to click on ground, go in here to the main maps next to albedo, where the eyedrop tool is, we're going to click on the color square, and you can choose whatever your color you want. But I suggest maybe a darker navy blue, almost denim, dark denim. Not good with colors. Yeah, that'll be good. So now we need walls, right? So we're gonna create an empty object. What an empty object is, it has a position. You can use it for spawn points. It doesn't actually have any mass to it. It's just kind of a transformation point, and that's it. No scale, no rotate. Well, you can rotate it, but for this, we're just gonna kind of use it like a folder almost. So we're gonna call this walls. From here, we're gonna right click in hierarchy, go to 3D object, and then cube. And then we're gonna reset the transformation like we did with the plane. And we're going to, on the y-axis, we're gonna do 0.5 because the scale is currently 1. So if you want it to be above the world plane, you want to do half of the y scale. So if we were to set it to 2, which is probably better, we're going to set the position to 1 on the y-axis. So now we're going to click on the cube, press W for the move tool. We're going to want to, let's see, so we're going to want to bring it, oopsie daisy, click on there. We're going to bring it to the end there. Go to the transform tab. We want it a more rounded number, so we're going to go with 20. We're going to duplicate, so we're going to click on cube and hit Control D or Command D. And then on the X position, we're going to do -20, so that way it mirrors it on the other side. We're going to hit Control D again. This time, we're going to go to the gear on the transform, and we're going to reset position, right? Now we're going to set 1 on the y-axis again. And then we're going to move this down here. Since we want it to be more uniform, we're going to set this to -15, I think is good. Oh yeah, what I just did there is I pressed F. Whenever you click on something and press F, it'll zoom in on it or focus on it so you can rotate around it with Alt, left click, and drag. It's a useful tool. So now we're going to duplicate this cube, Control D, Command D again. We're going to set it to +13 on the Z-axis. So now that we have that, we're going to click on 1, and then we're going to click on this cube. Then we're going to hold Shift and click on the cube across from it. Shift clicking allows you to select multiple things. If you shift click something that's already, if you alt click, no, wait. That's 3ds Max, apologies. So, shift clicking will select multiple objects. So, after you have 2 of them selected, we're going to hit R for the scale tool. And using that, it's kind of like the move tool, how it works, but you're going to want to click on this cube to stretch it in this direction. Don't worry about hitting the edge of the screen because it just infinitely goes. We're going to get it to about the edge of the map, this is about fine right there. We're going to do the same thing for the other set of cubes, and we're going to scale that up. Doesn't have to be perfect. About like that, right? Now we have our little arena. And now that we have these walls, we're going to label them accordingly. So if this is our game view here, hold on, let me just make sure. Yep. Make sure that the top wall works with this. You're not actually like opposite view of it. See how it changes in the game view? Make sure you're lined up with the camera view. So this top one is the north wall, as you can see in the game view. That's what's moving. So we're going to call this in the top right in the inspector. We're going to call this north wall. No space. It's important that you have it case sensitive and exactly how I type it, because that will be important later. Name them accordingly. So this is the east wall. This one down here is the south wall. This one to the left is the west wall. Easy. So now that we're at it, we're going to hit Control S to save, because that's always important. Make sure you're always saving your project. And now we're going to click on East Wall in the hierarchy, and then we're going to Shift click the North Wall to select multiple objects below it. And then we're going to click and drag over walls to parent it. So now what parenting is basically these are now the children of wall, which is the empty object we made. So when you hit wall, it will select everything that this parent has childed to it, right? So now for to hit walls, we can move it together uniformly instead of having to move every individual one or shift clicking everything every single time. We can just hit wall, and it also cleans up the hierarchy view. So because it's a drop down menu now, and we can sort of bring it back up, and now it just says walls. So if we want to access any of the walls, we just open it up, access them. Really easy, really intuitive, very good. Now we're going to set up the sort of main game mechanic objects. Nothing too intensive. We're going to do 3D object. We're going to make a sphere, and then we're going to reset that. And then from here, we're going to bring it up 0.5 on the y-axis. That way it's right on top of the plane. And we're going to call this ball. Easy enough. So now we're going to create a 3D object cube. We need to make the panels. Again, we're going to, let's make the scale on the y-axis 2. Maybe 1.5. And then we're going to bring it up 0.75, so that way it's right on top. So 0.75 on the y-axis. Then we're going to bring it down about there is fine. And then we're going to adjust it so it's -18, so it's more rounded up. And then we click on this on the cube, Control D to duplicate, and just like the walls, we're going to switch the duplicated one to just 18. That way it's exactly on the other side. And now we're going to shift click both of them, and we're going to scale them. This is adjustable, so if you think this can be changed later, if you don't think it's hard enough or difficult enough, we're gonna scale it up to about, let's say, 5.5 on the z-axis here. You can see in the top right of the scene view, there's all the axes here. So if you're confused on which one you should be scaling it on, make sure to look here. So we're scaling it on the z-axis, so this way. See that? And that is our basic environmental setup right there. Episode 2, we should be going over how to make the paddles move. But until then, thank you for watching. See you next episode.